What should give us hope that this is a turning point? That this is the moment we finally determined we would save our planet.
You're doomed. So to hell with it. Enjoy the ride. I tell people.
Wise men said, just walk this way to the dawn of the light. The wind will blow into your face as the years pass you by.
We all call it Planet X or Nibiru, but it is a dwarf star. It's either a red dwarf or a brown dwarf star. Now, the object, which is clearly Planet X by deductive logic process of elimination, is therefore now between Mars and Jupiter. It's not in the outer reaches of the solar system. It can clearly be seen, especially from the southern hemisphere.
The implications and the side effects of what might happen to us here on Earth is pretty scary. We're going to get into some of that. Now, one of the cool things that David discusses with us here is instead of having to just take his word for it, he gives you coordinates on where you can actually see it for yourself. Mid-2017, he says we're going to see an eclipse with Nibiru. He has been able to take his background and transition it into research on Planet X, and has recently compiled an awesome book with a treasure trove of information. David, how the heck are you?
Very good tonight, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you coming on here with us. I know that you had reached out to us a few weeks ago. You've got a really cool book coming up here that's going to break everything down with Nibiru. You know, let's talk about what you do.
Well, the way I got into it, I've always believed in following the money. About 5 years ago, I got into some research on the Pentagon black budget. And I don't know if you recall, but you probably do, that the day before 9/11, Don Rumsfeld announced at a Pentagon news conference that the agency was 2.2 trillion short. Money was simply missing, 2.2, not billion, but trillion. So having worked for a period of time at the Pentagon, I realized this was most likely black budget funds. And I did some investigation, and I ran across a couple of areas, basically the deep underground military base research done by Jesse Ventura, done by Phil Schneider, done by other personalities. And I realized, of course, that's likely the source of the lost money. It's black budget ops, and it's being spent. And why is it being spent in terms of these type of bases? So that's how my curiosity was picked, you might say. These bases, I understand, are built away primarily from geologic tectonic areas, but again, when Planet X passes, you're going to have new geotectonic faults established when you have force 11, 12, 13, 14 earthquakes. So I don't know how safe they're going to be. It could be a lost investment for those people. In any case, that was my basic introduction about 5 years ago, and then I got into the science of the topic. My understanding, and this is partly from Phil Schneider, I know he worked 11 years at Groom Lake Area 51. He says the black budget varies between 0.2 trillion and 1.2 trillion per year. I'm not sure when the inception started. It was absolutely going on in the late 70s and 80s. He says a couple of dozen of these may be reasonable for protection. I agree, nuclear protection. But the question is, why do we have over 130 of these? That doesn't really make any sense unless, obviously, Planet X is absolutely a fact, which it is.
Well, so, you know, 4 years ago, I remember reading an article on Yahoo News that claimed eventually people are going to be able to look up in the sky and they're going to see what looks like a second sun, but really it's a giant sun that exploded. I think they said it was Betelgeuse or something like that. So in my mind, when I read stuff like that in the news, I think it's, you know, the forces behind the scenes or whoever's kind of orchestrating the media prepping people, you know, subconsciously getting them ready for this type of event. First it's just an explosion that looks like a sun, and then, hey, oh, it is a sun. So, I mean, do you have any physical evidence, like pictures that you can say without a shadow of a doubt, or files or white papers?
Yes, I do. In fact, there's some very good videos on the internet itself that are good photographic analysis. There's one called Multiple Suns Rise Over Halifax, Nova Scotia, Those are the keywords that a person would enter on YouTube to read it or view it. And you can see the sun. And then at the 3 o'clock position, you have planet X. To the right of planet X, you have a separate lens flare. Now, that doesn't reflect the lens flare, of course, in the water below. But planet X is generating its own light, and you can see its reflection, therefore, in the water below. Next, I think a fog bank moves in, and it obscures the sun, but planet X is still visible. A lens flare cannot do this. Now, that's one good example of something they could simply look up themselves on YouTube. There's also some good Davis Station South Pole videos out there. And there's, in my book, which is Planet X, The Arrival in 2017 by David Mead on Amazon, I've done a video. It's on page 15 or 16 or so of the book, and I have a section called Photographic Analysis of Planet X, and I study one video which another analyst did an extensive study on. And let me just sort of explain what happened. A fellow named Glenn Vaughn on April 11th, 2015, was flying down the Pacific side of Central America. He's a professor, an ex-professor at California University. He took a 20 megapixel raw file with a Sony digital camera, and he confirmed the report by sending it in to a particular analyst for review. He took it through an aircraft window. Now, an analysis of the metadata indicated it was taken at 240 dpi, very high resolution, and the metadata further showed the date, the time, the GPS coordinates. I think it was a Sony DSC HX50V camera. In any case, using Starry Night Professional version, the video, which is referenced in my book and which is on YouTube, did a field of view analysis, and he determined Mercury is above, in other words, superior conjunction with the sun, and the object in the field of view, therefore, is not Mercury. Mercury does not have wings, as does this object, and Mercury does not have the brightness or contrast of the unknown object. Now, the analyst also performed a gamma test on a paint program. Gamma testing shows if an object is hot or cold. Hot objects generate, of course, their own light like our sun. A lens flare would be a cold object. They read direct light, they don't generate it. So he started with a gamma of 1, reducing it by steps. At point 10, the gamma illustrates stark differences. At point 01, he shows the hottest, brightest objects on the video. He then reduced brightness to a value, I think, of -3 in contrast to +2. The hot objects fade in together, proving they're genuine. Then he ran a luminance test to determine the intensity of the object, and he determined it was behind the sun, not a reflection. There are actually wings on the object, which is clearly behind the sun. Now, he stated this is deeply disturbing. The reason is that gas tails of comets follow solar winds, and they're not visible until the comet's orbit is inside of Jupiter, at which point, normally the luminosity at that point of the sun makes the tails of the comet or the planet visible. Of course, planet X, we all call it planet X or Nibiru, but it is a dwarf star. It's either a red dwarf or a brown dwarf star. Now, the object, which is clearly planet X by deductive logic and process elimination, is therefore now between Mars and Jupiter. It's not in the outer reaches of the solar system. It can clearly be seen, especially from the southern hemisphere. Now, as of April 2015, therefore, the date of that video and the analysis, Nibiru is close enough to the sun so that the sun's light is reflected to the tail, making it appearing like wings. And there's one other quick comment I'd make, because actually that video had 2 parts. The second part was a lady who lives near where I do, Sanibel Island, Florida, Melissa Huffman. Now, you can look at this video itself on YouTube. I think it has more or less gone viral, and nearly 1 million people have looked at it. And this is a 2015 video. The object is very interesting. She pans the sky and shows the object and then the moon. Now, it's clearly a planet visible just north of the sun. Now, using stellarium and knowing the moon phases, comparing it to her video on the moon, you can go to the derived date, take away the atmosphere and the ocean, and you can determine the relationship of the stars to the horizon. So to determine the date, you basically just use moon charts, and the moon is well below the horizon in all dates after September 26, 2015. Therefore, the video was taken earlier. Now, September 2015 moon phases give us a comparable to the moon in the video. And if you look at the moon phases diagram to the actual picture of the moon, it has to have been photographed on September 23, 2015, based on moon phasing. Now, on that date, Mercury in stellarium is very dim, somewhat above the horizon. Also, I believe it's in a different location than the unknown object. All other planets are below the horizon. The video, therefore, conclusively and plainly shows an unidentified planet, or dwarf star, planet X, of some significant magnitude quite clearly. So I can reach no other conclusion, and the analyst did himself, than this is a rare photo from this hemisphere of Planet X approaching us.
Wow. You know, and there's also speculation now, and I hadn't heard this until about a year ago, that not only is Planet X going to come our way, this dwarf star, but also a bunch of planets with it, like it's bringing in its own solar system. Is there evidence or truth to that?
Right. There's a number of videos there. I've seen some real good ones from the South Pole Telescope, and they indicate that there are a variety of moons around this. It's basically, as you say, it's its own solar system. A lot of people don't realize this, but binary, what we've got in our solar system here is obviously a binary twin. 76%, this is a fact, of all stars are binary twins. In fact, 16% are trinary twins. There are three suns, but ours has a binary companion, and it comes under the name of Planet X, Nibiru, and so forth, Nemesis. There are various names to it. But ours has a binary twin, and it's very common. It's extremely common, and it's basically what is approaching us. And apparently, from all descriptions, indications, reports, insider reports, photographs, and other sources of human and signal intelligence, it contains 5 to 7 moons around it. So it's a solar system approaching our solar system, which makes it extremely dangerous. The red dragon of Revelation 12 may well be, and I believe rather obviously is, Planet X, as is referred to in an earlier chapter of Revelation, I think Revelation chapter 8, in a similar manner. A colleague of mine at the university, one university in the western U.S., brought up a very interesting point, perhaps to cover up to my attention. Here it is. Basically, he said, the areas of the dragon anomaly have been covered or patched up by Google Sky in the past. But one of the ways to actually see what is behind this patched out area is to use a program called Skyview by NASA. Skyview, what that is, it's a virtual observatory on the net. It generates images of any part of the sky from wavelengths of all regimes, radio to gamma. You just filter it. Now, when you view these images in various filters, you can see the actual color of this anomaly in Virgo is red, and it does look very menacing, as it appears to have a face like a dragon with 2 profound eyes. It's very intriguing and quite strange. Now, just for your listeners, I'll provide very briefly the right ascension and declination if they want to go to Skyview. And here it is. Just cut and paste this coordinate. Here's the right ascension, 13 hours, 50 minutes, 44 seconds. Here's the declination, and that would be minus 8 hours, 13 minutes and 59.7 seconds. So right ascension is the celestial equivalent of longitude, and in the sky latitude is called declination. So you just enter those coordinates, and then on Skyview you just choose the Iris 100 micron telescope setting, and there you are. You've never seen an object quite like this one. Now, the sign itself might be a sweeping parenthetic of that entire biblical 70th week of Daniel, which is a key to solving the most complex cryptogram in existence, the Book of the Apocalypse. As to what it is, the astronomical scientific community, I think, is keeping a very low profile. And the question is, why did they ever cover it up to begin with?
Well, and not only that, if we could get into some of the more scientific stuff as well.
Because it's so close now, it's different. When it was first observed, probably the first time it was actually observed, it was observed in the infrared spectrum in 1983 by a orbiting Earth satellite telescope called the Infrared Astronomical Satellite. And this is when all those articles appeared in the Washington Post and the New York Times and so forth. And that's when, right before blackout occurred, there were some articles over a 6 to 12 month period of time when it was pretty much spoken freely of. And then all of a sudden, I think they realized the seriousness of the matter, and they went ahead and produced a blackout. Now, remember this, the blue daytime sky is going to hide Planet X until it eclipses the sun. But there is going to be a full disk solar eclipse right after September 23rd, 2017. This occurs, if you look at moon charts, on October 5th, 2017. And what happens, of course, during a full disk solar eclipse is the sky turns black, and that will reveal at that point, that week, in my opinion, the week of October 5th to 12th, according, if the book of Revelation is true, because this ties in perfectly with it, that could well be the exact month that we can first see it with the naked eye. So, in my opinion, combined with a predictive computer-generated astronomical model, the Bible, the book of Revelation, the Apocalypse, tells us that the red dragon, or Planet X, or Nibiru, appears after September 23rd, 17, but it has to appear before October 11th, 2017. At that date, October 11th, 2017, the sign in Virgo, the woman Virgo, will no longer be, quote, pregnant. Then the red dragon, or Planet X, therefore must make it an appearance before October 11th. So that seems to be a cutoff date. Jupiter, which is known as the planet or the star of the Messiah, exits Virgo, the Virgin, on October 11th, after having spent, I believe, 301 days, or about 42 weeks, in the, quote, womb region of that constellation. And again, after that point, the woman will no longer be pregnant. So that gives us a very narrow window, just to use the book of Revelation or the Apocalypse as sort of an intel briefing. And the great sign of the woman, is described in Revelation 12, 1-2, forms and lasts for a few hours. And according, again, to astronomical models, this sign has never before occurred in human history. It will occur once on September 23rd, 27. It will never occur again. And I believe it places us right at the time frame from that analysis of the Planet X approach to the Earth. I would prepare on or before the fall of 2017. I would conduct emergency preparedness. Of course, you want to be spiritually ready. You want to have a clear conscience and all that, but you need to do physical preparations as well. I think survival gear, emergency food, that sort of thing. And the reason is that, again, all this while you're going to get increasing levels of disinformation from the mass media until it's actually there. And then they're going to say, whoops, we didn't have any notice, we don't know what happened, and so forth. And they're going to run and hide in what they've already established. But, you know, the public is there, and the public has to fend for itself. This global warming, as you've heard, I'm sure, is a cover story. The Earth is heating up from the core outward because of the approach of Planet X. During the 20th century, I think there were 35 volcanic eruptions in a typical year. Now there are more than 35 of these every single day. So basically, when X approaches, that week you see it in the sky, let's say it's October of 2017, you know, for purposes of discussion, at that point, it's not going to actually collide, I don't believe, with the Earth. The Earth is only 8,000 miles in diameter. It may pass 5, 10, 15 million miles away, but it has a very high magnetic attraction. It's going to have a gravitronic effect. It's going to cause the shifting of the Earth's crust. It's going to cause major volcanic activity. It's going to cause tidal waves. And when a pole shift happens, the ocean literally comes up out of its basin. So you're going to have major weather changes, seismic activity, and volcanic eruptions. Probably at that point, Yellowstone, the Yellowstone super caldera, will likely erupt. That could affect up to a third of the United States, cover it with ash.
Well, let me jump in here for a second. I'm glad you brought that up, because you can clearly tell a difference now with how hot the sun is. I mean, even if you look at the same temperature, you know, 75 degrees now versus 75 degrees 10 years ago, although it's the same temperature, the sun on your skin even, there's just more heat there.
If you go to the book of Revelation, the Revelation indicates that the sun is going to be hotter at that time frame. Now, the EMP effect, Planet X has a massive tail. It's fantastically charged. It's magnetic. The tail has moons and rocks in it. Now, this can down aircraft and satellite when it passes. It can affect the electrical grid. Now, of course, NASA, JPL, and the other disinformation sources ignore this data. But here are the facts. The Earth has a nickel and iron core. Now, this generates its magnetic field. However, the magnetosphere has large holes in it. The magnetosphere is a static shield. Now, under routine solar conditions, it protects the Earth from coronal mass ejections. But when Planet X arrives, we're no longer under routine solar conditions. Now, you know that the magnetic poles have been shifting towards Russia at maybe 40 miles an hour a year. But when Planet X arrives, the physical poles will shift. Now, this will create some hyper-earthquakes, tsunamis, and the shifting of land masses. So if you want to look at a few different states, one thing people can do to protect themselves is simply be in the right location when it happens. Now, there's a few states to avoid. And California is highly dangerous. It's composed of rock plates. Now, when rock is compressed, it breaks. And you'll see the crumbling of rock, of course, as its mass goes upwards. Now, the West Coast will have major catastrophic changes, synergistic proportions, tidal waves, high hurricane force winds, earthquakes on the fault lines, volcanic activity over the magma. So it's highly dangerous. And I think the long-term danger is in riding out the shifts for those who are living near the boundaries of plates. Now, cities without mountains as a backdrop can just be washed out to sea. You'll have broken gas and water lines. San Francisco, it's on the San Andreas and other fault lines. A lot of the population will be trapped. Water will overflow the city. Survival will be minimal. California is not a good bet. Now, the area around Arizona, on the other hand, the Hoover Dam probably won't survive because of earthquake activity. And you'll have rivers flooding, and areas within rivers should probably be avoided. But you look at Phoenix and some of these main cities. Arizona has withstood many a pole shift. The area around Tucson is safe. Florida is another very dangerous state. Its highest elevation is 105 meters in the Panhandle. And but as for Central and South Florida and the Keys, these parts can be devastated by a tide of water. Colorado, for example, is a safe area. The domestic division of the CIA is relocating to Colorado. That should give viewers many clues right there. And of course, one of the safest parts of the country is the Ozarks, northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, average elevation close to 1,000 feet, self-sufficient water supply, agricultural land. They'll do well. They're also isolated from large metropolitan areas, and they're well enough inland to avoid flooding through, tidal waves. So it's part of the preparation is probably geographic. But I would expect when it hits, when you see this object in the sky, you'll have 1 to 2 days to accumulate all of the emergency food and water you can. I would accumulate at least a 3-month supply. I would highly recommend people educate themselves, understand the whole picture, and probably take action at that point.
Wise men said, just walk this way.
Folks, viewers who have followed my video productions these past few years are aware that my inspiration for publishing alternative news on the internet was a spiritual experience that I encountered back in the spring of 2003, when I came to the realization that a significant astronomical event would happen that was interrelated to the scriptures as well as to end-time philosophy. I began reporting and publishing information on Planet X Nibiru in earnest at that time, and I have never wavered in my belief because, like I have said many times, the feelings and beliefs that we have, whether they are acquired or inherited, come from deep within our spiritual realm. They are planted like a seed which grows and develops into something that is useful and beneficial to many people. Now, I am not a scientist or an astrophysicist, but I do possess a great deal of knowledge about earth sciences and what's happening to our planet from a geophysical standpoint. I'm not much of a theorist, but there is a theory which I consider to be important that I would like to present. It's a theory which cannot be discredited, nor can it be definitively proven. But still, the speculation is one to consider and ponder upon. There is a relationship between the entrance of Nibiru into our solar system and other current world phenomenon which the mainstream media is not telling us. Here's what I mean. There is a relationship between the heating of our planet and the oceans, the heating of other planets that are now taking place within our solar system, the melting of the Earth's ice caps and glaciers, the sudden emergence of sinkholes all over the world, the increase in red tides, rivers and lakes that are turning red, and red rain, and the flyby of the brown dwarf Nibiru and her accompanying orbital spheres. Again, this is a knowledge that I would risk taking because it is coming from a more ancient part of myself which understands and knows. It is absolute in understanding that there is an interconnected relationship between the crossing of Nibiru and catastrophic Earth changes. Changes in the behavior of our Sun, and changes in the behavior of other planets in our solar system. I am asking my viewers not to take my word for this, but to begin researching these topics on your own. I am asking my viewers to begin their own urgent investigations of the worldwide suppression of news that is reporting on Nibiru, and to begin looking into the relationships between the current phenomenon, which I just mentioned, all of which are getting more pronounced as each year passes. There is a relationship there. There is something to be learned. Here is something that each of you should know and understand. It's imperative that you discuss this among yourselves and with those who are eager to learn or who are open-minded to what's now taking place. And this has to do with the geological changes happening below the Earth's crust. The shifting of the interior behavior of the lava and mantle of the Earth, the changes in the way plates collide and arrange themselves just beneath the surface of the Earth. There are huge changes taking place deep in the interior of the Earth, and my belief is that these changes are a direct result of the pull of gravity coming from the second sun, Nemesis, as it approaches the inner solar system and acts upon our own sun and the gravity balance of the orbiting planets. It would be impossible for an object the size and mass of Nemesis, a brown dwarf star, with its own orbiting objects traveling with it, to pass through our solar system without disrupting the balance of orbiting planets and pulling upon our own sun in such a way that changes in the sun's activity become quite pronounced. Any changes in our sun's activity would almost immediately affect our own planet, including its interior, if the pressures were great enough. It's time to act as truth researchers. There are far too many who wish to distort the truth. They use every tactic in the book to keep you in the dark. Now, I know there are many of my viewers who are diligently researching the answers to the Earth's sudden and drastic changes that are taking place. But we should all be doing this. We have to report and share what we learn with our friends and neighbors everywhere, because there is a worldwide conspiracy to hide the truth about so many things from those who populate the planet. Remember this, it is the meek who will one day inherit the Earth. But this suppressed astronomical story about Nibiru's crossover and how it will alter the Earth and the solar system just happens to be one of those many things that are being kept in the dark. As I mentioned, there are strange happenings taking place within the interior of our planet. This is something that is being reported because it is a story that cannot be hidden from the public. It is there to be seen and noticed. Why are giant fountains of lava suddenly pouring out of some of the most dangerous volcanoes on the entire planet? And why are so many long dormant volcanoes suddenly roaring back to life? According to Volcano Discovery, 35 major volcanoes either are erupting right now or have just recently erupted, and dozens of others are stirring. Something is pushing magma up through the crust of the Earth at a number of key spots around the planet. The spectacular eruption of Mount Etna in Italy is making headlines all over the world. This latest eruption is the second this year, and comes just a month after Mount Etna experienced a flurry of activity in late January. On the island of Sicily, the giant fountains of lava that are coming out of Mount Etna can be seen 30 kilometers away, as seen in this video clip. On the other side of the world, a constant stream of molten rock has been springing out of Guatemala's volcano of fire since February 25th. It was the volcano's second eruption this year. And in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, a fire hose of lava has been pouring out of the Kilauea volcano since December 31st. Take a look. Meanwhile, a number of large volcanoes that have been dormant for a very long time all over the world have started springing back to life. For instance, the only active volcano in India has suddenly started spewing lava and ash after having been silent for 150 years. So many of these long dormant volcanoes are roaring back to life, and why this is suddenly happening now is puzzling many of the experts. And as you have seen, this isn't isolated to just one or two geographic regions. It literally is happening all over the globe. Last month, Indonesia's Mount Sinabung in the southern hemisphere erupted 7 times in the space of a single day, while authorities in the northern hemisphere were warning us that 4 of Iceland's biggest volcanoes are preparing to erupt. Indonesia and Iceland are about as far apart as you can get, and yet they are both being affected by this worldwide phenomenon. Now, without a doubt, something definitely appears to also be causing a significant increase in worldwide seismic activity. So let's talk about earthquakes for a moment. A website known as the Big Wobble recently published an article that included 2 extraordinary maps. The first map showed the number of major earthquakes from January 1900 to January of 1917. And the second map showed the number of major earthquakes since the beginning of this century. The difference between the 2 maps was startling, to say the least. It is becoming extremely difficult to deny that something is happening to the crust of our planet, and many are becoming concerned about what we could soon experience if the level of seismic activity continues to rise. We already talked about Mount Etna, but a much greater threat in Italy appears to be awakening under the city of Naples. A massive supervolcano known as Campi Flegrei is close to a critical state, and if it erupts, the consequences will be beyond catastrophic. The following comes from the National Geographic. A long, quiet, yet huge supervolcano that lies under 500,000 people in Italy may be waking up and approaching a critical state. Based on physical measurements and computer modeling, magma could be approaching the critical degassing pressure at the volcano in the metropolitan area of Naples, one of the most densely inhabited areas in the world, and where accelerating deformation and heating are currently being observed. If that supervolcano were to fully erupt, millions would die. The skies in the northern hemisphere would be darkened for months, and the resulting volcanic winter would cause famines all around the globe. We live at a time when our planet is becoming increasingly unstable, and a major natural disaster could change all of our lives in a single moment. Just because our lives have been somewhat normal for an extended period of time does not mean that they will always be this way. And those that are ignoring the rumblings of our planet do so at their own peril. There are many signs that foretell of an impending catastrophe. The scientific data speaks for itself, as does the numbers and intensity of the events that have already taken place in the world. If you really care about the planet, then spend more time observing your surroundings and less time fixated on your cell phones and remedial news stories that are only meant to distract you from what is really going on in the world. This is how we will come to know and gain a better perspective on those many things that the media doesn't want to report, that are deliberately being kept in the dark from you, the viewer. Be sure to follow the latest Planet X news pertaining to climate and Earth changes on our Facebook page, and follow the latest alternative news on our media website. In the meantime, stay safe and keep looking to the sky.
AKA Scott. Everybody calls me Chris, but my name is Scott. And I picked Crisis Actor making fun of the CIA for the Sandy Hook event. So that's why I used that name. And anyway, I just wanted to bring you what our solar system really looks like. There are 397 planets in our solar system. And this is from Patty L. Broussard's work. The second sun that you see there at the top of the screen, that is the Blue Kachina, and that's what we often see when we see the second sun. But there are 397 planets, exoplanets. Many of these are mechanically driven, and there is your real solar system. So this is why we're seeing so many different things all over the place. And once we get rid of the flat plate, 9 planets concept, you can begin to get a grip on reality of what's really going on out there. And as you can see, there are huge numbers of planets. There's clusters where they come together and move around freely, and it is completely different than anything that you thought or believed, and this will cause some cognitive dissonance, I do believe. So my work has proven to me that this is in fact true. There are so many different things flying around out there. So anyway, let's get on with the pictures. This is Ambler, Alaska, looking to the south at 8:47 a.m. And we've got 2 UFOs right there. And moving forward, we got them again. They've moved over a little bit. And then we get a whole bunch of them. Yep. They do exist. Just like I saw in my front yard. Same airport, moving along in the sequence of shots. We have this, and you know, we've seen what looks like a like an electrical discharge coming off the sun. However, I'm just theorizing here. What if this was an actual planet here, and this light, this is what is coming off the edges of it? Could this be the object that's causing the halos? It seems to have that same hue that we see with the halos. And let me progress forward here a little bit more. Could this be the sun simulator in front of it? Could that be light actually coming from the back, being our real sun? I do see an object down here as well. Probably going to be tough to see it on your screen, but it is there. And this light source does seem to have straight edges, leading me to believe that this may be the sun simulator. So my other theory there of light coming from the back of this seems to have some merit. One of my subs had sent in this halo that he caught, and this is taken somewhere down in the islands below Florida, and further down. I can't remember exactly where, but thank you so much for sending that in. That's a pretty awesome halo. But could that halo be what we're seeing, just like I showed you a second ago? Interesting theory nonetheless. And once again, at another airport, Anatuvik, looking to the south, we have the same phenomenon. And as we progress forward, we can see this very large orb here. Going back, is this an object here? Is that the striped planet? Certainly could be. So what do we have here? Do we have an interaction between the sun and some of these objects as it moves closer? Don't know. Is this the diamonds in the sky? The Beatles, Lucy, Diamonds in the Sky. Sorry, I can't sing, so. I believe that was Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Sorry, I had that wrong. But anyway, another angle here at the Anatuvik airport. And, I've been looking at these cams for a couple of years now. So, when I see things that I haven't seen before, and this seems to be somewhat of a theme here, because I keep seeing the same thing, and different camera angles, different airports. So are we getting more of an interaction going on between these objects? Well, that certainly seems to make sense. Well, we do know there is a striped planet out there. There's one planet with a big white stripe in it. We've seen that many times. And now I'm going to show you the sequence here. And what makes me think that this could be the object is, we've all seen where they just drop down a short chemtrail. But this is unusual that it actually grows in thickness and length as we progress forward, and that is uncharacteristic. Usually a chemtrail just begins to spread out, and this does not. It just If anything, it elongates and it holds its thickness and actually gets closer. And the more I do this, the more I can actually see an orb shape associated with this. So I believe this is the striped planet. That's my belief. I'm not telling you have to believe. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. All right, I'm just showing what I see and what I think it is, based on my own research. And take it or leave it. And this is Beaver looking to the southwest at 2:02 p.m. And what's interesting to me is that we can see a striped planet right there. And then we also see the orb, the red orb, the nemesis star perhaps, brown dwarf. But we also have the striped planet in the same view. Now I know this is faint. I'll try to enhance it so maybe you can see it a little better, but there it is. Alright, I'm going to show you this. You know, I can't really explain it or anything like that, so I'm just showing you what I'm looking at here. But this is very unusual because you've got very different sized orbs here. You know, so a lens flare is usually very similar in size, or looks like whatever the image it is that it's flaring off of. These things are so varying that it makes me think that there's some validity to what's actually here. And let's go forward now. And we do know that these objects coming in have moons and things like that. Kind of interesting. Now this is very interesting, as it is showing the pterodactyl looking thing that we've seen before. This is a huge, huge, huge creature. Don't know what it is, but we've seen it several times now. A pilot had spotted this thing before and said he had never seen anything with a wingspan of 20 feet or so like this before. It looked like a pterodactyl. So, you know, I've spotted it. Well, Tarky has found it for me, and I've also spotted it many times. So, this thing exists and it's out there. What it is exactly, we don't know, but it's huge. And here's another picture of the big bird up here. The thing is enormous. All right, so here's something that's anomalous and quite unusual from April 13th. Excuse me. This plasma discharge or something like that. Very unusual. Never seen anything like it. This is from Cape Spencer, looking to the east. This was on April 11th at 10:54 a.m. Well, this is going to do it for Easter 2017. These are from April 14th. That's my favorite right there. That is obviously behind that chemtrail. And the shelltards want to know why this thing disappears. Well, it's because of the chemtrails, the light diffraction, and the metal particulates, reflections, things like that. Sometimes they work, sometimes they fail. And when you get the light just right, these objects can be seen. So anyway, hope everybody had a good day, and thank you for watching, and we'll see what next week brings. But that right there is irrefutable.